Welcome back, class. Right here in this video, I want to kind of walk you through one of the most important theories that we're going to be revisiting throughout the entire semester. Hopefully by now you've read through chapter 1 and you've read about Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. Here he is down here at the bottom of your screen, Erik H. Erikson. That is not his given name. He gave himself that name. And he was very much a stage theorist. This is a stage theory. And when I say stage theory, what you should think of is continuity versus discontinuity. Remember that from the beginning of the chapter? A stage theory is discontinuous. It means that you're not just sort of going from infancy to toddlerhood and up until adulthood gradually and slowly, and everything is just sort of a gradual change. It means when you're an infant, then you become a toddler, you're very, very different. It's a fundamentally different stage of development. So there is discontinuity among these stages. How many stages are there? You can see that there are 8. How far do they span in the lifespan? Well, you can see they go really from birth on up to death, infancy on up to the older adult who is facing the end of his or her life. So we've got 8 stages, and in each stage there is what Erikson calls a psychosocial crisis, a psychosocial crisis. And what that means is that in each stage there's something psychologically, some sort of psychological need that you have that you're working on, and you resolve the crisis either positively or negatively. So let's look at the infant. You can resolve, the basic crisis is basic trust versus basic mistrust, okay? You can resolve it positively and end up with basic trust in the world, or you can resolve it negatively and end up with basic mistrust. How does the infant do that? Well, think about an infant. An infant is an utterly helpless creature, right? Cannot survive outside of the womb without help. They have a lot of needs. They have needs for what? Food, nourishment, sleep, diaper changes, love. They have a need for love and holding and bonding. Babies that don't get that love and holding and bonding end up being diagnosed with what's called failure to thrive. A baby can actually die from lack of love. So here's your helpless baby, and they're completely dependent upon the people that are around them for all of their needs. And this is really, truly a life and death situation for this baby. And so what the baby needs is caregivers who are willing to respond quickly, sensitively to the baby's needs. When the baby needs to be fed, the baby should be fed in a timely manner and given what they need. If the baby has soiled their diaper, they need to have that changed in a timely manner. If the baby is crying, they need a sensitive caregiver who will come and take care of them and figure out what is the problem and provide whatever the baby needs. If the baby gets that, if the baby gets that kind of sensitive caregiving, then he forms what Erikson calls basic trust. He has a basic sense that, yeah, I can trust the people in my environment, I can trust the world to meet the needs that I have. And that really kind of extends into his deep, deep part of his psychology where he thinks, you know, I must be okay because these people around me are taking care of me. I can trust them. I'm okay. Everything is right with the world. Imagine, though, a baby whose needs are not met. Maybe caregivers are on drugs or drunk or depressed or just not very interested, selfish maybe, and leave the infant to cry for hours in the crib. Don't do much holding. Let the diaper sit and cause diaper rash. Ignore the baby's cries for hunger, not responding sensitively. The baby develops what Erikson calls basic mistrust. I can't trust the people in this world to take good care of me. So that's, and that eventually translates into I'm no good, I'm not worth being taken care of. Okay, so now this is very interesting because this, however you resolve this crisis, you carry that with you for the rest of your life. Okay, if you have basic trust, then when you become an adolescent, you're going to think that teachers, police officers, potential boyfriends and girlfriends are basically trustworthy people, and you're going to be open to relationships, and you're going to be willing and able to trust the people who are put in charge of you. When it comes time to become a young adult and maybe get married or form a relationship, an intimate relationship, you're going to basically feel like other people are trustworthy and have an okay time opening up to another person. A person who ends up in basic mistrust in infancy has a really hard time with those, has a hard time forming relationships as a young adult, has a hard time with intimacy, has a hard time trusting other people. Let's talk about some of the other stages. After infancy comes toddlerhood. What is the number one thing that a toddler is working on? Think 2 to 3 years old. They're working on potty training. That's the big developmental skill, okay? Potty training. And this just feeds into what they're working on at that point, autonomy versus shame and doubt, right? A toddler is going around, I can do it all by myself. I can tie my shoes. I can put my own pants on. I can pick out my clothes. I can go to the bathroom. I can go potty and use the potty all by myself, right? They want to do everything by themselves. Autonomy versus shame and doubt. And as parents, as wise parents, we need to help our kids with that stage. What's a toddler's favorite thing to say? No. No and mine, right? They're trying to assert their autonomy. Now, if you don't ever give your child, your toddler, the ability to exert autonomy, which is such a huge thing that they're working on right then you get a really defiant child. And if you're constantly saying no and not letting them have autonomy, they can end up in shame and doubt, feeling like, I'm no good. I can't do things by myself. Okay? So let them put on their shoes. Velcro, please, because they can't tie a real shoe, right? Let them put on their shoes and plan that it's going to take 15 minutes for them to do it. If you're so impatient to get out the door that, and aren't we all racing around trying to get out the door? But if we hurry our little toddler and say, come on, no, I'll just do it for you. You can't do it fast enough. They can end up in shame and doubt. Plan that extra 15 minutes for them to put these things on themselves and pepper them with questions all day long. Do you want to wear the red shirt or the blue shirt? Do you want to brush your teeth first or have a book first? Do you want peas or carrots for lunch? Do you want to hop into bed like a bunny or slide into bed like a snake? Give them a million different things that they can choose, make choices about, and that feeds the sense of autonomy. It gives them self-control and will and power that they need. Preschoolers, initiative versus guilt. If I get out my vacuum and I start vacuuming my rug, what's my preschooler going to immediately go do? Grab her toy vacuum and start vacuuming right along beside me. Mommy, look, I can do it. I can help, right? They're working on initiative. They want to show you, look, I made this picture. I know my colors, right? They're working on taking the initiative. They want to climb up there and wash dishes with you. They want to go out there and change the oil with Dad. And if they don't end up feeling like they've got that initiative and feeling like they have direction and purpose in life, they end up with what Erikson calls guilt. And guilt is this feeling of, I couldn't do things. I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do. In the school age, this is industry versus inferiority, and the virtue that comes out of this is method and competence. What's a school ager working on? Man, they are working on all kinds of math and science and history and social studies and reading skills. They're doing basketball and golf and throwing balls and climbing ropes in PE class. They may be signed up for music lessons or signed up for sports or taking art classes. They're doing things. And they love that, and they're working on that, and they're also working on their social skills. So this is the industry versus inferiority stage. Can I do many, many things? Can I have some competency in all of this? And if they don't feel like they're good at stuff, if they don't feel like they're good at anything, then they end up in inferiority. Have you known a kid who kind of struggles with school? School is just not their thing, and they end up feeling inferior and not good enough? That's industry versus inferiority. The adolescent, what's the adolescent working on? They're working on who am I, right? One day they're wearing all the black and the goth, and the next day they're signing up for sports and trying to be a jock, and then they're experimenting with being with the bad kids or running around or being a skater or what's the new one, hipster, right? They're just trying on a bunch of different identities. They're trying to figure out who they are. What's their career going to be? What kind of person are they? How are they going to dress? How are they going to present themselves to the world? This is called identity versus role confusion. This stage, Erikson thought, ended right around age 18. And when he was studying and writing, that was true. Back in the 50s and 60s, by the time you were 18, you were done. You knew who you were. You pretty much got married by about age 20 or so. Most people didn't go to college. You got married. A year later, you had kids. You stayed in the same job. That's not quite how it works today, right? There is an argument to be made that today identity versus role confusion extends up till maybe about 25 and maybe even into about age 30. We'll hit that a little bit more when we get to emerging adulthood in a later chapter. The next stage after adolescence, identity versus role confusion, is intimacy versus isolation, and this is the young adulthood stage. Affiliation and love is what should come out of that. This is the time when we form intimate relationships with other people, whether it's a marriage relationship, a long-term committed romantic relationship, and we can either become intimate or become isolated. In middle age, we hit a stage called generativity versus stagnation. This is the point at which we stop kind of focusing on ourselves quite so much, and we want to become generative in the sense that we're looking back to the generations that are coming behind us and thinking, what can I leave behind that is going to live on after I am gone? And this might be as simple as taking care of your kids. Raising your own children is a generative activity. Teaching is a generative activity. Building a company is a generative activity. I knew somebody who developed a Suzuki Strings violin program at her school. That's a generative activity. Okay? And if you don't end up finding a way to kind of give back to to the generations that are coming after you, then you end up in what Erikson calls stagnation, where you just sort of become stagnant and depressed and bored and not really going anywhere in life. And then finally, the last stage is ego integrity versus despair. This is your older adult who sees that life is gonna end at some point, maybe 10 years from now, maybe 1 year from now. And this person is visiting the idea of, have I lived a good life? Yeah, bad things happen. Yes, I didn't always make the right choice, but can I make sense of the life that I lived? Can I come to a peace about the life that I lived? And if you do come to that sense of peace, then you end up in what Erikson calls ego integrity. And if you don't, you end up in what Erikson calls despair. So this is Erikson's psychosocial theory. Main points. It is, we're going to hit this throughout every single chapter. We're going to hit Erikson, so you're going to become very familiar with it. There are 8 stages. At each stage, there is a psychosocial crisis, and you either end up on the positive side up here, or you end up in the negative side down here. Okay? All right, that's Erikson. We'll see you next time. Bye.